Okay, so while we're waiting for people to join, actually, we had a question for you just to get things started. So the webinar is all about unlocking your potential as a project manager. We just had a question to get things started around what actually is the job of a project manager. If anyone's willing to give it a go, interested to hear your thoughts, interested to hear your thoughts in the chat. If you're willing to post your thoughts about what the actual job is of a project manager. Yeah, we've got someone saying the chat's been disabled. I don't know if that's. I'm seeing the messages about the chat being disabled. We're just trying to fix that now. Okay, if you want to give that a go again, it should be working now. I like that one, Emma. Right things in the right sequence plus a load of paperwork. I think we can all probably relate to that. Organize and coordinate the use of resources against a timeline to achieve a purpose. It sounds like a good definition, David, sorry. Stephen, I like that you're including therapist within your description of a project manager's job. I think, again, that's one we're probably all quite familiar with. Okay, we're a few minutes past 2, so I think we'll get going. We've still got people joining, but we'll get started with the webinar. So first off, very much appreciate you all taking time out of your day on a Tuesday afternoon to come and join the session. I'm hoping it'll bring some value for you, some interesting thoughts that you can take away and put into practice in your job. So to get started, I just wanted to do a few setting the scene slides, as I'm sort of calling it. So just so we're sort of clear about what I'm going to be covering today, some of the terms we're going to be using. First thing to say really is to tackle a big one. Not going to be talking about methodologies in any depth today. I very much believe methodologies are vital to project success, and I also believe there's good and bad in every methodology. But there's 2 reasons really that I don't want to cover them today on this webinar, and in fact we don't cover them to any real depth in our course. The first of those reasons is that there are plenty of good courses and good people out there who are teaching methodologies. So feel there's little point us going over the same topics. You can go and find out information that you need from those courses from those people. But the second one, I guess, is more important, is that for those of us who go on LinkedIn a lot, follow project management forums, the debates are still raging about waterfall versus agile. And from my point of view, what I see when I work with clients is that the reality is most clients just don't care about methodologies. It's not what's important to them. And actually, most companies are operating some form of hybrid approach. They're not waterfall or agile. They're somewhere in the middle. They're muddling through. And as project managers, we should only really be interested in dealing with the situation that we find on the ground, dealing with the reality rather than the theory. And very much what we talk about in our courses and our approaches is tackling that reality, focusing on that reality rather than getting hung up and stuck within theory. Second point, just a terminology point really, is about I use the word client a lot. I know we talk about sponsors, we talk about stakeholders in projects. I talk about clients because I'm now from a consultant contractor background, and I think that phrase would be quite familiar to us. Perhaps to employees, we don't necessarily think of the people, our stakeholders, our sponsors, as our clients. But I think it is really important that that's how we do view these people, because we are delivering work for them. We are providing, they are recipients of a service from us as project managers. And I think there's real value to us in thinking of them as clients and treating them in that particular way. I've used the word project manager a few times. I just want to say, I think someone mentioned in the comment about program managers. I think just for ease of terminology today, I'm just going to talk about project managers. But I think a lot of what we're talking about in this webinar would equally apply to program managers, portfolio managers, any type of change leader really. But to keep things simple, I'm just going to use project manager, or to shorten it, PM. But you can take it to apply to those other disciplines, those other roles. Another key point to make is that certainly I'm not here to teach you about how to manage projects. I think this is very much more about ideas rather than prescriptions. So concepts I'm going to talk through, I'm going to introduce, are ideas to help you open up your thinking and build an approach that works for you in your project management practice. As I say, it's not a prescription, because as you'll see as we go through this, I don't really believe that there is value in trying to create a magic solution, a one-size-fits-all solution. The real value in being a project manager and what will take you from being a good to a great project manager comes in you being able to use your skills to move away from black and white thinking and apply them to embrace the grey areas, to embrace the complexity in the work that we do, and work with it rather than trying to force it into an ill-fitting box. So it's all about ideas, concepts, rather than being prescriptive about a way to work with your projects and your teams. And finally, the only word I sort of came up with here was magpie. I think we are, as project managers, we are magpies. There's very few new ideas coming out in project management. We take the best ideas, we take the learnings as we go, and we integrate them into our ways of working. There's very little in this webinar in terms of original thinking, but I guess where I think the value comes is from taking existing ideas or ideas from parallel disciplines or various thinkers and stitching them together or using them in a novel way. My suggestion to you is that you take the same approach. So some of the ideas today might resonate with you, some might not. Some you might want to explore further, some you may want to discard. That is all absolutely fine. As ultimately, it's only you who can build the PM practice that works for you. And that's one of the key messages to come out from what we're going to go through today. So, okay, let's get on to the actual webinar itself. So we've got a number of topics to go through. I'm going to start off just by going through my story and the story of the real world training business that I run, to explain the journey that we've been through. I'm going to come back to the question I asked at the start around what the job of a project manager is. I think it's really critical to start thinking about that. And I think that's some of what brings about challenges within project management. I'm going to introduce our sort of 3 pillars that we've based our course around, and then go through each of those, which are the PM, the mindset, how you use project management. I'm calling it Project Nous, but how you use project management frameworks, methodologies, approaches to your benefit. People power, as we're calling it, so the people within the project who are the ones who are really going to decide whether the project succeeds or fail. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about our training course that we're going to be running from April, with an offer for those of you on the webinar if you're interested in coming to join, before we wrap up with some final thoughts. So to start with our story, so I started project managing in the early 2000s. I think even before that, I'd probably been doing it for a little while without realizing it. And I guess that's probably quite a common story. I don't think anyone ever sits at school and thinks they want to be a project manager. It's something you find yourself doing and you fall into. And that was certainly how my career started in project management. I then went through 10, 15 years working for various financial services organizations, mostly within insurance, until I landed up in around 2012, I think it was, working on a pretty major transformation program, a new back-end system implementation at an insurance company, £100 million plus scale of program. And I realized at that point I was the only person on that management team of that program who wasn't a contractor. I think up until that point, I thought that all contractors were the best of the best, and I didn't think I'd be able to mix with with people in that market. But I guess working on that program gave me the understanding and the view that I could. But then it was really the realization that the people sat next to me were getting paid twice what I was that gave me the push to get into the contracting world. So in 2016, I quit my job on 3 months' notice with no job to go to. And a couple of months later, I'd secured my first contract, and I was into the world of contracting. I then worked for 5 years in contracting in a number of contracts with, again, staying in the financial services sector. But then with the IR35 changes that came in a couple of years back within the UK, I could see that it was going to get more tough to be a project manager. So I decided to set up a project management consultancy business, which is called Create Cadence, which I established in 2021, has now been running for 3 years. And we work, again, with financial services clients to support the types of complex delivery that they don't have the in-house resource or in-house expertise to complete themselves. But then, and I'll come on to a bit more detail around this. What we've then moved on from within Create Cadence is thinking really about some of the challenges in project management, and that led to us to launch our real world training product in 2024 this year. So when I try and think throughout that sort of fairly long journey in project management, what it was that I struggled with, because I've sort of just talked through it as if it was all fairly straightforward. There were lots of struggles within my project management career, and I was really trying to nail down for this webinar and think, what is it that has been a real struggle for me throughout my time within project management? I think the first one is really about the kind of misalignment between what's in the books and what happens in reality. Whether it was writing PIDs that got filed in the bottom drawer, creating plans out of thin air, creating risk logs that nobody seemed to care about. What the courses said, and even what the frameworks these businesses claimed to be using, just didn't make sense to me, and I found that troubling. And I guess one of my first reactions was to think, was I doing something wrong? But then also immensely frustrating and inefficient way to work, with this disconnect between the frameworks, the books, and the reality of what I saw in the ground. I also didn't see very much within the frameworks, within the businesses that I was operating, that actually talked about the people. And to my mind, it really is, project management is really a people business. It's about behaviors. And none of those things were really getting talked about in any of the training that I did. And I'm very much a believer that it is the people who will make or break any project, not whether you're agile, waterfall, or hybrid, or whatever else. So it was that lack of focus on people, and really having to learn that for myself, that created a challenge for me. And then finally, and I've sort of alluded to this a few times, it was thinking about what the job actually was. I think project management is, strangely, for a discipline that values clarity and documentation. I think being a project manager is at times quite a confusing job to do. It can be poorly defined. It can stretch, your boundaries can be unclear. And I think for me, certainly, that brought about lots of these imposter syndrome type feelings of, well, am I doing a good job here? Am I doing anything useful here? It's the team who are delivering. What am I actually bringing to this? How am I making this project succeed or fail? And I think that was the third part of the real challenge that I felt in, or a struggle that I had with my project management. journey. Through the years of working in project management, I was able to overcome those struggles and establish a way of working that worked for me. But it took many, many years and many, many missteps to get there. And around a year ago, I started to think that there must be a way to teach project managers the things that it had taken me 20 years and many failed projects to figure out. So I started to make some calls to check in with other project managers to see if the kind of challenges that I was, or the struggles that I was articulating resonated with them. And one of those project managers was Stephen Joyce, who's on the call today and is now part of the real world training team. And when I spoke to Stephen, I immediately could hear the penny drop with him. I could immediately hear him saying, yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time. These are exactly the type of problems that I can see. These are exactly the gaps in the training that's available. I'd love to get involved in working with you on the real world training program. So Stephen's enthusiasm probably helped fuel the reason why we're talking about this today. But I could tell by the way he immediately got it and his alignment that we were onto something. So I then reached out beyond Stephen to lots of other PMs within my network and change leaders, and I did find that the problems we were describing were universal. But one of the challenges that I got back, or one of the pushbacks from someone I spoke to, was that, yeah, these things you're describing, they're the kind of things you can't teach. It's just something you have to learn through trial and error, through experience. And I guess my personality, sort of the way I took that was, right, there's a challenge. So I'm going to try and prove that point wrong, and I'm going to try and create a program, create a framework, create some concepts, some ideas, and a community that can bring project managers on that journey more quickly than it took me to get through the struggles. So real world training was born effectively from that, and sort of pulled together a mission statement really for what the real world training program and community is all about. So what we're trying to achieve really is to build a community of project managers, equip them with the real world skills to face the challenges of the job with confidence, to achieve career, life success and satisfaction. And I think that there's three components to this mission, really. One is the community side of it. I certainly found, and I know from talking to other project managers, that project management can be a lonely business. Your development team will be working together, your testing team will be working together. As a project manager, you can often be stood on your own in a project. So having a community and being able to build up a community of like-minded project managers is really important to me, and I think is vital to supporting project managers to achieve their goals. I've already mentioned the gap in the training market, and we really wanted to focus on real world skills. That was the term we came upon, because for those of us who've been doing the job for any length of time, we all know what it takes, or what's involved in getting a project over the line and getting teams to work together and to work successfully. And it's trying to capture what those skills are and trying to help project managers to build those skills so they can be confident in their jobs. And then finally, it's the outcome side of it. So career, and I put and life because I think career and life are very closely tied. So it's about helping project managers to achieve an outcome and to feel happy, confident, and in control of their work, and that being a major contributor to life satisfaction. So I'll come back to that question we asked at the start. What is the job of a PM? Like everyone these days, I thought the easy way to find this out is to ask ChatGPT, and here's what it came back with. So a project manager responsible for planning, executing, overseeing projects, ensuring they're completed on time, within budget, and meet the specified requirements. I think a few of you raised some of these points within the chat at the start of the meeting, and I think ChatGPT has probably produced what might be seen as a fairly standard definition for that you might see for project managers. I guess there's two things that jump out for me when I read this definition. One is it's pretty dull, and I ask myself the question: is this what we really do? Where is the people side of it? Where are the challenges? Where's the creating solutions for our clients. Where does all that come into it? It doesn't really capture this. And if I was to read this is the sort of thing that wouldn't make me jump out of bed in the morning and think, great, I want to go and do my project management job. So I think it doesn't quite capture that. And then within this, and it's a word I'm going to use quite a lot throughout this webinar, is contradictions. So there are two contradictions within this that stand out to me. One is executing and overseeing. I mean, can you really do both? And I think that's another key area of struggle for project managers is finding where to draw that line. Get too far into the doing on a project, and you can end up micromanaging, getting caught in the weeds, losing sight of the bigger picture. If you're not close enough to what's going on in the project, you don't really understand the challenges. And then the other bit that I think is a bit of a contradiction or a challenging point with here is the on time, within budget, and meet the specified requirements. I think, and I'm sure if I were to look at most of your CVs, you've probably got a statement on there like on time, within budget, and meets the requirements, because pretty much every CV from every project manager I've ever seen has that on there. But actually, is that true? Because I personally believe that's an impossible objective to achieve. And I think trying to achieve it is something that probably contributes to stress and burnout within project managers. A more true statement might be something like would be working towards a managed delay to the timeline, a managed increase to the budget with agreed compromises to requirements. But I guess having said that out loud, I can understand why people don't put that on their CV. So we can kind of see even from the base definitions of project management, we as project managers are setting ourselves up for challenges. And while I was just finishing off the webinar yesterday, I was just thinking about an alternative definition, and this is one that I came up with. So a project manager is responsible for exposing, balancing, and managing contradictions to move towards realistic outcomes for clients. Now, this is, I think, a definition that comes a bit closer to the truth of what it is we do. I think a key part of what we do is try to manage and balance contradictions, and this is something I'll return to a bit later in the webinar. I guess one of the challenges with this definition is while it might be closer to the truth, it probably still doesn't sound particularly exciting. It's not something to be motivating. And what we do on our course is we get you to think a lot more about what it is that you do in project management and write down a personal statement that works for you. And we call this your PM brand. I know personal branding is all the rage, and for those on LinkedIn, you've probably seen similar things to this. A simple formula to pull together a definition of what you do. I mean, if you get nothing else from this webinar, hopefully you can come away with a useful LinkedIn headline, because they tend to follow this similar kind of formula. But I think there's real value as project managers in trying to think about some of these things. So the concept here is you define who it is you help, you define how you do it, and you define what the outcome is for the client. I'm guessing personal branding wasn't something you probably thought you were going to cover on a PM webinar, but I think this is why it matters. Project management, it's a tough job to pin down. So if you struggle to describe what it is you do and why that matters, then it's hard to place a value on it. And if you have a clearer sense of purpose, it will motivate you, particularly to get through those tough times and those tough projects. So thinking about the personal brand, as the quote says here, the perception of yourself that you carry in your own mind and therefore is carried in the minds of others. Thinking about that and working through that is a valuable exercise to be able to understand yourself and the value, and to be able to then articulate the value that you provide to clients. So something for you to consider and think about. So now moving on to the three pillars, which I mentioned at the beginning. So we've broken down our course and the way we want to think about project management into three areas. One we've already started to touch on, which is you, the project manager. I mean, I believe that in project management, or indeed in any other discipline, you have to look at yourself first, as that is where you can have the most control, influence, and the highest ability to make change. If you can understand yourself and adopt the right mindset, then managing and leading your projects and the people around you becomes that much more straightforward. The second pillar is the project itself, the delivery you're tasked with, the framework within which you have to operate. And a key part of what we try to do is to try and help you to make those frameworks, to make the organization you're working with work for you rather than working against you. And that's really the key to making any of these delivery frameworks work. And then finally, it's the people side of it. So your sponsors, your clients, your project stakeholders, and how you can really work with and make your teams work more effectively. So in our course, we deep dive into these areas, and we spend a couple of modules on each of them, in fact. But for today, with the time that we've got available, I'm just going to pick one point from each of the three pillars. So we start with the PM. So I mentioned at the start, earlier on in the webinar, in our description of project management, the key skill of being able to balance and manage contradictions. What I've done here is just lay out some examples of the contradictions we see in project management in our day-to-day work, and I'm hoping these all sound quite familiar to you. The first one particularly is one I think we definitely all see, and something that this brings to mind is that you may have seen the equation in life for happiness being reality minus expectation, and I think for so many project managers, so many project challenges come from the difficulties that project managers have in understanding or communicating the reality of a project and not being able to keep a lid on expectations. And that imbalance between reality and expectations leads to a lot of angst from clients. It leads to a lot of challenges within the project. So that's a contradiction that really needs to be thought about and worked on. But there's lots of others, as I've listed out here, being hands-on or hands-off, being innovative versus providing stability, thinking about your team versus the overall organization, thinking about short-term planning and goals versus the long term. And I think once you start to think about these contradictions, you'll see them everywhere within your project management practice. So it's fine to be able to acknowledge contradictions, but how do we deal with them? I guess the first stage, as I've said, is about awareness. So what I do when I'm blocked on a project or even a task that I'm working on is I now ask myself the question up front: am I trying to do something which is impossible? Am I dealing with something that is contradictory? Am I faced with a demand that I can't answer because the two positions don't align? And I think that's a really useful thing to do both for yourself and within your project teams when you hit up against a blocker, because quite often the answer is we're being asked to do something that's just not possible. Now, awareness is, say, the key first step, but then once you have that awareness, it's then about acceptance. So rather than trying to wrestle with the problem, rather than trying to solve the problem, because a contradiction by its nature can't be solved, you have to get to a place of accepting that's what you're dealing with, and then you can move forward. And the way to move forward is to find balance. And that's the way that you can resolve a position of being in a contradictory place with some of your with any of your project management activities. And then the final bit is around communication. So being really clear that I think a large part of our job really as project managers is about shining a light on problems and making sure that people are aware of it. And I think the same applies here. So it's about communicating where you've seen something that doesn't line up, making sure that your clients are aware of this, and making sure they continue to be aware of it for as long as it persists. I had a really simple example from a project manager I was talking to the other day, who was raising a challenge that for Steerco is a familiar one to me. At a Steerco, he'd been asked to produce a one-pager, the famous one-pager that we always get asked to do for Steercos. But the fact of the matter is, it was a hugely complex issue that couldn't be boiled down to one page of PowerPoint. So he didn't know how to deal with this and had spent probably about 2 or 3 days trying his best to simplify, reduce this complex challenge into something that would fit onto a single page. So in discussions with him, what we decided would make sense is he'd been asked for the one pager. This is the balancing of the contradiction. He'd been asked for the one pager, so it was fine to produce a one pager, but to also then produce some supporting information to go along with it to make sure that his client, the sponsor in this case, was getting the one pager they asked for, but also being made clear that that didn't really cover the issue in full. And here is the rest of the information that you need, which really answers the problem. So that was the way that he found to be able to balance what was a contradictory position, what was something that he couldn't initially resolve on his own. A fairly simple example, but I think it's useful to think about these contradictions, to think about these challenges, and ask yourself whether you're in a contradictory position and what you can then do about it, rather than spending 2 or 3 days trying to battle through it. In line with this, there's a similar concept. Really, is about you as a project manager. I used to think of PMs as being on a spectrum. So there's the PMs who love the governance, there's the PMs who hate it and focus more on the relationships. There's the science versus the arts, there's the worker versus the entrepreneur, there's the linear versus iterative, there's the acting versus thinking. Lots of these things, at opposite ends of the spectrum. But what I've come to realize is this is another example of that black and white thinking. And I think to be a successful project manager, we have to step out of that and start thinking about the balance. So the key here is to replace the verses with the and. You have to be both an artist and a scientist. You have to be both an entrepreneur thinking of solutions, but also at times you have to knuckle down and do the work that's involved. You have to make sure that you're covering both sides of the project management spectrum coin, for want of a better phrase. But one key learning certainly that I've picked up through my career is that there are times when I've been weaker in one side of that spectrum. I've not been able to do both. And then the key question to ask yourself is who can help you? So in one of my projects that was very successful, I knew that the governance side of things wasn't my strong point, whereas building the relationships with the stakeholders was. So I was able to bring in a superb project administrator, project coordinator to come in who dealt with all the governance on the program, which allowed me to then excel in what I was good at on the relationship side of things, while knowing that other side of the coin of governance was being completed. So it's all about finding that balance. And then the final point on you as a project manager, and this is sort of to conclude on contradictions, is I think these contradictions that I've described, they're difficult to manage, and I think those are the source of a lot of the mess that you find within projects. They lead to stress and burnout. So how do we as project managers manage those contradictory positions internally within our own heads? And I think the idea that I've come across, and this is from a guy called Brad Stulberg's book, Master of Change, is about delivering a mindset which in itself sounds contradictory when you first think about it, but I think really works, and that's rugged flexibility. So this is all to do with having strong central values, with values being the things that you're important, but having flexible beliefs, and beliefs are things that can change in the light of new evidence or approaches. So values, to say it again, values are what you think is important, beliefs are what you think is true. Now, if you flip that around and you have beliefs sat at your core as part of your core identity, then that's when it can create challenges in terms of your mindset, because something that challenges that belief, if you're holding that belief as part of your identity, then any challenge to it becomes a threat to you and to your identity, even if those beliefs are wrong, even if they're limiting, even if they're holding you back. Whereas if you can have a core value of something like curiosity, that then allows you to explore and change beliefs. And in doing that exploration, in making those changes, that's a moment of growth for you. So holding a value on what you think is important is all about focusing on getting it right rather than being right. And I think that's a really important differentiation to make within project success. And the key here is to understand your core values and the extent to which you are aligned to them. We go into this in a ton of detail on the course, and obviously we don't have time to go through and do a full values exercise on the webinar today. But I really believe, having gone through this exercise a number of times, that actually understanding your values, understanding what you are all about, and how that relates to your project management work will deliver huge value for you. Um, as a sort of takeaway, if you're interested in doing this sort of work, I would suggest Googling. Brené Brown has got an excellent values exercise that's available free online if you Google it. And you can go through and do that exercise and try to understand your values. And I'd also recommend Brad Stolberg's book Masters of Change, as well, if you're interested in this sort of area. Right, so I'm going to move on to the second pillar now, which is around projects, and I'm going to focus just for a moment on one area of projects. Again, within the course, we have 3 modules on the project pillar of our approach, which covers the full spectrum from initiating projects to managing projects, the middle part of projects, through to closing down and ending projects, and everything that's involved within the life cycle. But just picking out one element, I'm just going to focus on risk. Risk management is often described as an element of project management, but my view is that it really is project management. Every change we do brings risks, and those risks need to be understood and accepted. Now, I've personally found a huge amount of value and useful material from looking at risk from other disciplines, and I think I mentioned this earlier. And particularly there's books of Morgan Housel. If any of you have come across any of his books, he's got 2 books out at the moment and a really good podcast, and they're all about investing, because investing is all about risk. But the lessons, the overlaps that you find between thinking about investing and thinking about how you manage project management risk are huge and really interesting. And this is where this quote came from. So things that have never happened before happen all the time, which I really like as a quote, because we can spend so much time on projects thinking about risk, focusing on risk sessions, pulling together the most perfectly crafted risk logs. But the reality is, we're very likely in any project to be hit by something that we couldn't possibly have predicted. And of course, the recent pandemic was, a worldwide example of something that, while businesses thought that it might happen, it wasn't particularly well planned for, and the risks weren't particularly well managed when that hit us all. And the key within risk management as well is it's finding that balance between making risks clear to your clients, moving forward on your projects, and building an adequate margin of error into your plans and approaches. So just to expand into a little more of the practicalities around risk management, I'm just going to talk through some of the approaches that I take on risk management in projects. So I do always run upfront risk sessions on any project that I'm working on. I find these hugely valuable. One, it sort of brings the team together and gets you off and running as a group, and allows the group to really think through the change that they're going to make. I find it's a useful input to any requirements that are being written, and it just gets lots of stuff out and onto the page up front within any project that I work on. The way I like to define risks is with 3 parameters. I think this is a reasonably well trodden path, but thinking about the cause, the risk, and the effect in any way that you're actually defining risks. So 2 ways that I've shown here that you can do it. You can phrase it as a because of X cause, Y risk or risks might occur, which could lead to Z effects. Or you can phrase it as there is a risk that, name the risk, as a result of, name the cause, which could mean name the effects. But I think having that 3-pronged way of describing risks really makes you articulate it in a clear way. The other advantage of drawing out risks in that way is that you're able to then start to really think about risks by either looking forward through those statements or looking back. And what I mean by that is, you can start with causes, things that might happen, and think forward and go to what risks that might cause to materialize. Or you can start with effects. So something has happened, and if you're on the cause and risk side of things, you can then start to ask the question of so what. So something's something causes a risk to occur. So what? Do we care about that? Or you can think about it in another way with those sort of statements of something has happened. Uh, think about it as in a reverse engineered risk, I guess. So thinking in future of something that has happened, what was the risk that caused that to happen? So really useful way, I think, to try and get your risks out on the table. Think of it in a forward thinking way of something happened which through which a risk materialized, and the other way around, thinking about an effect, which then what might have been the risk that would have caused this. And that second one is one I particularly like to do, and we call it a pre-mortem. So you get to the end of your project, you do a thought exercise where you get to the end of your project, it's all gone horribly wrong. What were the things that caused it? You can then work back, think about the problems that would have caused that project to go wrong, and you can then start to mitigate against those things. So the pre-mortem is something that we do in a lot of our projects. Then it's about thinking about the limitations of your approach and planning accordingly. So if you've got a high risk project, you can think about short milestones with interim checkpoints to get feedback quickly. If you've got a low risk project, you might have longer running milestones because you haven't got as much concern about the delivery. And then finally, it's about creating a sensible, efficient, ongoing management process for risk. So not having a 50-line risk log that just becomes someone's job to maintain and no one really wants to look at, but it's something that's focusing on what you can control and what really matters. And the two key questions we pull out from our training course that we ask is that you should be asking yourself with any risks is this risk a material concern for the project? And are we willing to do anything about it? Are we willing to actively manage it? So if the answer to those two is yes, it should be on your risk log. If answer to one or the other of those is no, then you need to start thinking about whether it should be on your risk log or not, or just something you're accepting as part of your delivery. Now, finally, I'll just come on to people, which is our third pillar. Just thinking about really something that very much interests me is thinking about project management or project leadership. Are you a project manager or a project leadership? Looking at this online, I'm pulling together some thoughts around what project managers are versus leaders. So the project manager is more of the specialist, the leader is more of a generalist in the project world. Project managers make plans, project leaders solve customer problems. Project managers focus on the task at hand, project leaders focus on people, directing teams versus motivating teams, maintaining a status quo versus questioning boundaries. I know that I would see myself, and as my career developed, much more in that project leadership box. And I think that's really the area that certainly I feel is more aspirational for me, motivates me more in terms of what I want to do. And I think that's generally the path that project managers tread more into that leadership role. And what do I think is it that kind of gets you there? The phrase coach leadership is one that's out there, but I really think as project managers, what we do has close ties to coaching. As my project management career progressed, it came more apparent to me that the best way to lead my teams was to work with them to clarify vision and objectives, and then to get out of their way and let them to get on with their jobs. And equally important was part of my role was making sure that I was providing air cover from management questions and things that were stopping them doing their work and getting in their way. And I see this type of approach of project management as much more about coaching leadership. It's about empowering people to do their best work. I recently completed a coaching course. It's actually the second one that I've done, and as I say, I really see some common ground between project managing and coaching. And I am of the belief that to be a great project manager, you have to have some of those elements of coaching within your project management practice. Because I think as a coach, the coach's job, if you look at any definition of coaching, is to observe their clients' challenges and shine a light on them, to challenge their thinking and their approaches, and to provide a safe and supportive environment in which the work of growth can be done. And I think all of those align with what you would imagine would be needed for great project management. So I won't go through all of the aspects of what coach leadership is all about, but I think there's a couple in here that sort of stand out to me. So empathy and listening, really making sure that this is both from your team, understanding the challenges that your team are facing, and also your client or your sponsor and what they're wanting to deliver. Asking powerful questions in coaching, it's all about what questions, open questions to get information out of people, to get people understanding what's in their own heads. I think that is hugely important. And the growth mindset, to ensure that it's all about learning, it's all about making mistakes, but actually acknowledging that those are all part of the journey, and rather than avoiding situations that are uncomfortable or challenge you, or where you might fail, it's pushing forward into those and seeing them as a learning experience. And then finally, I think investing in learning is a hugely important one. As I say, throughout my career, I did your standard project management training, I did agile training, and I did coaching courses, and I did various other courses. And I think it's really important not just to focus on project management training, but also to step outside and to learn things from other disciplines. So there's a sort of neat segue from investing in learning as being our final point there on the coach leadership journey to talking about our training course. So I've mentioned it a few times. Real world project management training is the name of our course. We're launching our next cohort on the 16th of April. And we're offering an opportunity for everyone on the webinar to come along, join our community of PMs, and join the next cohort, the next course, which will be a 9-week online course led by our team of project experts. So within the course, what you get over those 9 weeks is 16 hours in total of expert-led training, and I'll come to talk about the trainers in a moment. You'd also get three 1-1hour group mentoring sessions where we'll bring the group together. We can share some of the challenges that are going on in your day-to-day work together collaboratively to share a learning experience, to share insights, to help each other to overcome the sort of challenges that we're facing within our project management jobs. We'll have an exclusive Slack channel to build up again that community and that collaboration, which will have direct access to all of the experts in the team. So you'll be able to come and ask us any questions, anything that you've got that's going on either in your career development or within a project. We'd be more than happy to pick those up on a one-to-one basis within that, or you can reach out to our community for answers within our Slack channel. And then finally, a comprehensive project manager's toolkit. So the outputs really of everything you'll be learning in the session, neatly packaged up into something that you can refer to again and again, use within your project management work to help you develop your career and perform. So total up, adding up the total value of that, about £4,500 worth of value wrapped up within all of that, within the time of the people that'll be involved within the course, within the extras that we're giving away as part of our training course. So our team, I've put our unique team of experts, and I genuinely believe we've brought together a really special team of people to deliver this course and to work with us on the content. So I'm down as course leader, so I won't introduce myself. You've already been through that, but my 20 years background in project management and setting up a consultancy, and then also my coaching experience. On the leadership and people side of things, we've got Alex Mackay, who is leading 2 modules on that. Alex has got 25 plus years of senior military leadership experience. He's also now a fractional director and COO, and also is a certified coach, hugely qualified, hugely experienced, amazing leadership experience that he's bringing into our course, and we'll share with you as project managers. Dr. Camille Coppen. So Camille leads on the more the people, the softer skills and productivity side of things. She's got a PhD from Oxford in experimental psychology. She runs her own consultancy, Bright Wings Performance, and has been a consultant herself for 10 plus years with some of the big players in the market, Accenture, Barclays, and HSBC. So Camille brings all of that experience, all of that knowledge into the people and productivity side of our course. And then finally, Stephen Joyce, I mentioned Stephen at the start of the course. Stephen's a hugely experienced consultant. 3 modules on project management and the project management life cycle, the initiation, the management of projects, and the close down. So Stephen's got over 10 years experience working with many large international businesses as a freelance consultant. He's a full member of the APM, certified Scrum Master, and also has an MBA. So huge amounts of experience there within our training team. And all of this experience will be accessible to you if you choose to sign up, join our course, and join our project management community. So I mentioned at the start we've got an offer for you on the course. So our standard course cost, inclusive of VAT, all the numbers here are inclusive of VAT, is 1194. But what the offer that we've got running at the moment is a discounted price up until the 28th of March. As I said, the course starts on the 16th of April. But up until the 28th of March, we're offering a £250 discount on the price of the course, which brings it down to 944. There's also options within the sign up, which you'll see if you go to our registration page, which I can see that Ariane's just posted in the chat. You can spread the cost of those payments across three months, if that's going to make it easier for you to be able to join. And then finally, an offer that we've got, a very limited offer we've got, is that we will also offer for the first 10 people who sign up to the course, on top of the £250 discount, which we'll be offering to everybody before the 28th of March. For the first 10 people who sign up for the course, we will also be offering a complimentary 45-minute coaching session with one of the experts on the page that I showed you before, which in itself will be worth £250. I think probably worth more than that. But that's really an opportunity that you can really explore in depth, one-to-one, either things about your career or any particular challenges that you're facing in your project management practice, your development. You can have that time with one of our coaches to really dig into all of that in depth. But yeah, as I said, that's only available to the first 10 people who sign up with us on the course. So we're coming up on time. I did want to make sure I finished within the hour. So just wanted to share just my final thoughts really. So I've used the word practice a lot, and that's a deliberate thing throughout this webinar, because that is what I truly believe project management is. As this quote on this slide illustrates, I think we need to give up that illusion that we can control and close everything, and embrace the reality of being unfinished. Embrace the complexity. Embrace the challenge of a constant learning journey. And that's what I really feel about project management. There's no finish line. There's no time when you can say, I've cracked project management. There's no time when you will ever deliver the perfect project. It's an ongoing journey towards mastery. There'll be good and bad projects that you'll manage, and that's certainly been my experience. Just because I've delivered one project really well doesn't mean the next one goes in the same way. But the key for me has always been to learn from every project I work on and from every person that I work with. And that's really at the heart of why I wanted to launch the course and develop a community of project managers, so that we can all share this experience, share the learnings, share best practice between ourselves. And if you decide to come on that journey with us, that's what you will be a part of. So a simple definition of practice is the deliberate repetition of a process with the intention of reaching a specific goal. And I think for me, within that definition, the key words are deliberate and intention, as they define the difference between actively practicing something versus passively learning. And I think it's very much project management, and successful project management is very much about that active practice. So my question to you, just to wrap up, and we'll finish a few minutes early, is what deliberate and intentional actions can you take from what you've heard today, which will enable you to transform your project management practice? So, Kate, thank you very much for listening. Really enjoyed sharing all that with you. Hope you found it was useful, and yeah, I hope to see you on the course. Thank you.